everyone, welcome back to another video. Today was round 8 of Sunway Formentera. I finished my game a couple of hours ago. I had a very long dinner and now we're here to talk about my game. In round 8, I faced Adam Mekhane from France, FIDE Master rated 2300. So this was the first pairing that I was matching someone that was high rated but still pretty close to my rating, and this game would determine whether my tournament is, on the good side or not. Because if I lose this game, then it's an okay-ish tournament, nothing too crazy. If I draw this game, I guess nothing much changes. But if I win this game, then we're talking about quite a decent tournament already, because only 2 rounds after this one. So this game was super important to me. Also, by winning this game, I would be playing against someone higher rated again. If I lose, then I would be playing someone lower rated. So, you want to be playing higher rated, of course. So anyway, my opponent started with the move e4. And I played the French, so I was really excited for this d4, d5, and knight e2. And I was not entirely sure what to go for, because there's so many moves you can play here against the Tarrasch, right? And I decided to go for bishop e7 again, just like I played against Sosa. So here, my opponent for c3, and this caught me really off guard. And I remember I prepared, of course, against bishop d3, knight f3, main developing moves, but c3 is one of those sneaky moves that make things a little bit more complicated. Let me show you why. Because I play c5 here because I have to do that, otherwise I get a little stuck here, or I get into a position that I don't want to be in. My opponent took on c5, I play knight f6, takes, and here I got a little bit confused because in the lines that I prepared, the pawn is on c2, and then you can take with the knight on d5, and there's no such thing as b4 because you have some knight c3 moves or something. But here with the pawn on c3, the queen can freely move to b3 whenever, and it looks very different. So I was not entirely sure what to go for here. Do I take with the knight? Do I take with the queen? Here the pawn on d5. And in the end, I took with the queen because I thought, okay, the queen is more active. I need that queen to do a thing or two because I'm down a pawn right now. I need to fix that somehow. My opponent plays b4. I play a5 to attack the pawn. And I played these moves pretty quickly for someone that is in new territory, has no idea what they're doing, and is down a pawn. I was playing pretty quickly, so I'm currently on the 1 hour and 23 minutes. We're on move 7, and the past few moves were like new territory for me. So the fact that I played this really quickly was a bit surprising, honestly. But at the same time, I played logical moves. But deep inside, I was like, am I losing this game already? Like, is this like +2 or something already? Because it really felt terrible. So in this position, when my opponent was spending some time here, I started to get really concerned about knight c4 because the threat is simple, knight b6. What do I do against this? Well, their engine told me that it's fine. It's currently zeros, and the reason is because after takes, knight b6, you have queen takes c5, you lose the rook, but as you can see, you can win some material back. You can play queen a5, you can win the knight back on a8, and it's fine. Of course, you did take 2 pawns with you, but the fact that you're losing the rook, you're giving it up like this, and you're still fine, is just completely insane to me. So, yeah, I was, of course, really scared of this move knight c4, and I'm pretty sure that in the game, I would not have a clue what I was supposed to do. So, yeah, I'm really glad that this didn't happen, because my opponent played the move knight f3. And I was hoping to take on b4 here, then capture, after the capture back, I would capture on a2, but then I realized there's some bishop c4 moves, and that is ruining things a lot for me. So I have to be really careful here, and then it suddenly hit me. I can just play knight c6, because after bishop c4, I move the queen to h5, and it's not so clear how you can defend this pawn anymore, because after a3, I can just take, right? This pawn on a3 is pinned. If you take with the c pawn, knight takes b4, and I'm just simply winning the pawn. c5 is falling at some point, and black has a really pleasant position. So that's why, yeah, it's really interesting to see that white's position is sort of falling apart already. Not much yet, but I guess you can say that the queen side is sort of loose now. b5 was played, knight e5, and I was feeling really confident here because I thought, okay, I'm taking that pawn on c5. I'm back in the game. I thought I was completely lost a few moves ago, but apparently it was fine. But now I know for sure that I'm completely fine. My opponent goes for a4, really clever move, because now if I take on c4, knight takes c4, queen takes c5, bishop a3. Not bishop a3 here, but I was thinking that I might run into some issues as the queen b3, bishop a3. This move bishop a3 was really tricky for me, so I didn't want to allow my opponent to develop so easily. So I played bishop takes c5 first, short castle, and here I was struggling to think which move I should play here, because I really want to capture that bishop on c4 and have the pair of bishops, but if I do that, as I said before, I'm allowing my opponent to develop quickly. But if I don't take the bishop, then what else do I have? So yeah, I took on c4, which was not a good idea. Now I'm in a slightly worse position, but I thought I have to do this. I need to do this because that bishop can, you know, maybe become an annoying piece if it gets back to e2, then to f3, and I thought, okay, let's just take that. Knight takes c4, and I thought knight d5 here, because I'm attacking the pawn on c3, I'm blocking the queen over here on the d file, short castle is next, and I was feeling confident here. But then bishop a3 happened, and I quickly calculated that knight takes c3 is not a good idea, because the queen can just move anywhere, and yeah, it's a very unpleasant position for black. It's just simply not good to take that pawn. It's a poisoned pawn. Your king will not be able to castle after, let's say, knight d6 or something. So yeah, that's a tough position for me. So that's why I took on a3, rook takes a3, and here short castle. And here I did realize the problem, queen d4. So my dark squares are super weak. Now that dark square bishop is gone, next is knight b6, and black is having some issues on the queen side. The pawns are super weak, the bishop is not developed, and it's really difficult to see how it will develop if the b7 pawn will be under attack, right? So I had to come up with something here. And I started, well, initially I was thinking of the move g5 here, but I thought, okay, Anna, that's completely crazy. Let's not get to that extent, right? I play f6. So, taking it easy. Maybe I moved, if knight b6 now, then it takes e5, and I will try to develop my bishop and hopefully get some attack going, I don't know, or stabilize the position with queen f7, some retreating move somewhere. But my opponent didn't play that. My opponent went for rook d1, and here I was like, okay, now we have no choice anymore. The only move that I can possibly play here is g5. And it was so funny because, so the past couple of games, I believe it's now 3 games in this tournament where g5 is making it or breaking it in the game. And so far 2 games have been really, you know, important that this move g5 was, you know, good. In one game, I made a slight mistake with this move, but basically g5 has been such a thematic move in my games. And my viewers have been telling me after my games on the live streams, they've been telling me that, yeah, next time you should smile at the camera when you play g5, you know, because it's a sign like, yeah, like we have this move again. And this time I was like, I'm not sure if this move is good. I could not really process whether this was a good move or not. It felt like super risky, and it was indeed. But I did take the opportunity to quickly glance at the camera and have like a quick smile. It was so awkward, and my opponent also looked at me like, what is she doing? I felt so embarrassed, but yeah, I thought I had to do it. I thought it was really funny to play g5 because it's been such a thematic move in the tournament now, and everyone's talking about it. So, so yeah, there it was. I played g5, and well, what idea is simple. I want to attack on the king side. Of course, it's weakening my king side a lot, and I need to be really careful because knight b6 isn't coming. And I refuse to take that. I don't want your knight. I want to use my knight for the attack because I'm threatening knight e2 check now. I'm coming in the queen. It's not so easy. So my rook is not hanging just yet because my opponent has to defend against knight e2. So queen e3 was played, and this was actually not a good move. My opponent had to play queen d6 here. The reason is because this stops me from moving the rook to b8. So it's that simple. I did think that I had a lot of compensation here, because I saw this move and I thought, okay, like I'm fine losing the rook. I can see some ways, like some queen g4 move, e5 can be played to activate the bishop, and there's some crazy line with knight takes a8 and maybe bishop h3 or something, and it gets really crazy. And I can understand that my opponent did not go for this line because, you know, you need to be a bit more cautious about your kingside. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy tactics in this position, and I believe that's why my opponent went for a bit more safe move, queen e3. But now is where the party begins. Queen g4. Once again, white cannot take. There's checkmate on the board otherwise, so g3. And now I thought, okay, I really want to sacrifice my rook. Like, it's begging to be captured, basically. It's there to be captured. But I couldn't really think of an attack here. It felt like I had too few pieces in the attack. Getting the bishop in the game was a bit difficult, so I thought I have to move the rook. Let's just save the rook and we'll figure out what happens next, because my opponent doesn't really have any move that can really ruin my position anyway. So king h1, knight h3. I keep the knight around the king so that, you know, in case a bishop lands on this diagonal, it could be checkmate. So rook d4 was played, and from this moment onwards, I thought, okay, I think now we are in the driver's seat, because the idea is simple. I'm able to develop my pieces, e5 is incoming, and I feel like I'm the one putting pressure from this moment onwards. Rook a1, e5, rook d2, bishop e6, my bishop is finally out, and this is where my opponent started to crumble. We're on move 24, I'm on 14 minutes, and my opponent on 9 minutes, and yeah, I'm ahead on the clock, even though I wasn't at the start. But yeah, here my opponent went for the move knight g1, and I thought, okay, that move makes sense because you want to trade off the knight over here, but it also doesn't make sense. It's like, if your opponent makes such a move, it can't be right. There must be something wrong with this. So that's when I thought, rook b d8, I'm going here to take over the game. And after rook a d1, my opponent made a huge mistake. It was necessary here to take on h3. Initially, when I played rook d8, I was like, okay, my opponent takes, rook takes e2, queen takes, queen f3 check, king g1, bishop h3, checkmate, next move. And then it hit me, there's queen d5 check, trading the queens. And I thought, okay, it's a little bit disappointing. So I had to trade, and then bishop e6 or something, or king f7 to defend the pawn, and next I can move the rook to d8, and so on. Wasn't entirely sure what to think of this endgame, because my bishop is keeping the king boxed over here really nicely, but I need a few more pieces to actually make use of this. So yeah, I was not really happy to see that this is leading to an endgame that is a little unclear for me. So yeah, I was not really excited to see this, but my opponent didn't play it. My opponent went for rook a1, and I saw this already like from miles away that this cannot be right, because I take on d2. You cannot take with the queen, because then knight takes f2 and you lose the rook because it's check. That's why rook takes e2 is played, and now queen b1. One funny thing to note, I had a slight consideration to take on g1. Like I remember focusing for like a few minutes, because I thought, if king takes g1, queen b1 check, king g2, what if bishop h3? It's one of those moves that you're like, maybe there's a forced checkmate, because king takes, queen f1, king g4, h5, because if takes, queen h3, king g6, queen h7 is checkmate. It's one of those typical patterns you see in puzzle rushes, you know? But of course, after h5, my opponent can just move the king to f5 or f3 even, and the king is running away, and I need one more piece for the checkmate. Just one piece would be enough, but I don't have it. So that's why this plan is not working out at all. And yeah, I was a little bit sad about that, but I thought, no worries, queen b1 is winning, because after f3, I can play the move g4, which just turns out to be not the greatest move. Yeah, the best moves are a little bit more complicated. My idea was simple. I want to get rid of that pawn on f3, because after f takes g4, bishop takes g4, and my plan is simple. I want to start playing bishop f3, because it is the threat. The queen cannot capture it, because then it's checkmate on g1. So the queen is tied down to that knight, and that knight and the king on h1 are both stuck. I really thought my opponent was going to play king g2 here to get out of the pin, and then I had to think of something, creative with knight takes g1, queen takes, bishop h3, king f2, and I wasn't entirely sure how to win this, but I knew it had to be good with the king super exposed like this. But it's a bit difficult to involve the rook into the game, so I wasn't entirely sure about this, but I was really happy and relieved that my opponent played the blunder rook g2. I would say this is a blunder because after e4, bishop f3 is just impossible to stop. At this point, my opponent was already down to like 40 seconds, so he was playing on increment, which is why it makes sense that my opponent blundered. But yeah, I was really happy about this because I knew that, okay, now we are absolutely winning this one. Yeah, this move 30, by the way. So 10 more moves until the 14th move. Knight c4, bishop f3, and I'm simply winning the exchange. So I take on g2, I trade off the queens, there we go. And here I go f5. And for some reason, I thought it was so easily winning. This cannot go wrong ever. After knight c4, I went to king f7, and I didn't realize that my opponent can play knight d6 check. Because king e6, and basically my opponent's trying to capture both those pawns and then push all those pawns on the queen side. What I should have done was, what was maybe a better idea to do, is to play f4, because after takes, rook takes, the king is cut off permanently. As soon as this knight leaves c4, let's say knight takes a5, I can push the pawn, and the pawn is simply promoting. And yeah, if the knight just doesn't do anything, then I'm just moving the king forward and slowly capturing all of those pawns on the king side. Queen side, I mean. So yeah, f4 would have been such an easy win. But of course, I have to make my life very difficult and play king f7. Knight e6 check, king e6 takes, king d5. I'm just activating my king because I thought I need to activate my king. That's the number one rule in endgames, activate your king. Knight takes a5, e3, and I actually had to, think a lot and be really careful because this is one of those endgames that you can just lose with black. Just because there's pawns and knight involved over here. Yeah. King f1 and f4 was the one very decisive moves because all the other moves are questionable. So g takes f4, rook takes f4. I'm trying to promote that e pawn, but after king e2, I realized that, okay, king e4, still winning probably, but after knight c4, rook f2, I wasn't entirely sure with those two pawns over here. I wanted to get rid of that one pawn at least and then slowly capture all those pawns. Knight c6, king e4, knight b4. My opponent is playing very tricky here because at rook a5, b6, I have to play rook b5 to stop the pawn, otherwise the pawn is simply promoting. And then my opponent plays rook d3, knight d3, threatening b7 basically. Doesn't really mean as much, but still, you don't want to allow b7 that easily, so I'd capture. Knight c5 check, and the problem is that I cannot really hold on to this pawn because knight e3 check, king e4, knight c5, and you just go back and forth. So that's why I had to go to d5, knight d3, and here I thought of something creative, rook h6. I want to capture the h-pawn and just run the h-pawn down to the board and promote, and yeah, somehow I should win here. But yeah, it still looks very tricky. My opponent went for h3, and here I thought, okay, I'm not going to take that pawn because there's knight f4 check, so I'm just going back with the king. But now that the pawn has moved to h3, I can easily go to g3 and capture that pawn at some point. So I was really happy about my opponent moving h3. King f5, king takes e3, rook takes, and my opponent has to, well, doesn't have to, but in order to defend the pawn, the king has to go away from my pawn, so that was really nice. Now I can start pushing the pawn. c4, h4, knight e4, rook f3. I'm threatening rook f4, so knight e6 check, and I move the king forward because I thought this endgame is completely winning. I'm just putting my rook on the 8th rank, my pawn is promoting, and nobody can stop my pawn. c5, h3, c6, h2, c7, rook f8, and of course the queen versus knight endgame is completely winning for the queen side. So my opponent tried a few more tricks, knight e4. If black promotes here, it is actually not so clear. Apparently it's completely winning, but knight f2, you have to take it, and then white can promote. Now this should be winning, but I'm pretty sure, this is not so something you want to be facing or dealing with. So, apparently only one move is winning here, by the way, which is actually really crazy. But yeah, you don't want to get into such situations. So I just play King f4. I just step out of this check threads. Knight f2, King f3, Knight h1, King g2. And this is the moment that my opponent resigned. So I was super happy with this win because, as I mentioned at the start of the recap, this game was super important. This game basically makes or breaks the tournament. And, well, it's still too early to say that, oh, like, this is, such a good tournament now. There's still 2 rounds to go, so anything can still happen. But the fact that I'm being paired up higher against higher rated players now is really good for me, and I'm really excited for the last 2 rounds. I was a bit unsure about my tournament so far. I had some mixed results. I had a really good result, but also results that I was like, okay, this is, I had some bad losses, So to win like this felt super good. My time management was good. Opening was good despite me feeling completely clueless about it. And I'm pretty happy overall that I took the risk with G5. It was successful once again, so that makes me really happy. And really good game overall. So we go to tomorrow's game. Super excited for it. And usually round 9 is the last round, but in this tournament we have a round 10 also. So super excited for tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the support. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow. I keep saying this and then I realize that I'm recording a YouTube video that is coming up later. I'm so used to being a streamer. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the support, and I hope to see you in the next video.